First of all, the UAE has actually only just published its data protection laws in 2021. We're yet to receive the executive regulations on how the enforcement regulations are going to work and how the enforcement body is actually going to be regulated and how they themselves can regulate companies who haven't complied with the data protection legislation or what they can do to comply with the data protection. First of all, I think most of the companies worldwide often just oversee and underestimate data. In this challenging market that we are at the moment with technology, we having vast amounts of data, from personal data or what can be deemed as personal data or general data. And the UAE law itself makes a specific categorization for personal data, and it actually applies to generated data. So from my perspective, my advice always is use a common sense approach. You are getting data from here, there, and everywhere. You need to know where you're storing that data, how you're storing that data. Have you got permission to use that data? And lastly, and most importantly, you've got to anonymize this data. You've got healthcare legislation, you've got banking legislation, which is completely different than the federal law, though it is actually answerable to the federation. But you've got to always say, okay, I'm using this data. Have I got permission to use this data? And will I have consent to use this data? And use it for that purpose, which is the most important. I was working with a client recently who is a well-known real estate company owned by one of the sheikhs in Abu Dhabi. And they said, great, we've got data from something that we advertised in real estate properties. Were they interested? I'm going to use this data for marketing purposes. I said, well, you can't really do that. If someone's asked you, yes, I'm interested in plot 76 on Reem Island, doesn't mean that they'll be interested in using data for a supermarket on Reem Island. So you first got to think, am I going to use that data for what its purpose? Have I got consent to use that data? And where am I going to store that data? So I think having a strict compliance, rigorous internal policy, employing people who know what they're doing in terms of data, and actually having a compliance program and a corporate governance structure to say, you think it's just data, numbers and lines, when in actual fact, it's not. So that would be my first port of call.